All right, good afternoon. This is a Chapter 7 review for your chapter test. And it says, first of all, it says to write each percent as a fraction in simplest form. What you're needing to do is I would copy down these examples and then solve them first, and then I will go over them and see how well you've done by comparing your answers to mine. And then again, if you have questions, certainly feel free to write those down and ask those in class the next day, and we'll get some more clarification on that. So go ahead, hit pause, and solve both of these. Go ahead and do that now. It says write each percent again as a fraction in simplest form. So again, since I have a percent, I'm going to simply write it as that number over 100. And then I am going to need to simplify that by finding the greatest common factor, and you divide both of those by 5, and I would get 1, and then 100 divided by 5 is 20, and 1/20th is in simplest form. For letter B, I would take 125 and again write it over 100, which then is going to equal, since it's an improper fraction, 1 whole. 100 goes into 125 once, with 25 left over out of 100. And I would divide that by the greatest common factor, which is 25. And I would get 1 and 1/4 being my answer. Let's take a look at our next one. It says write each fraction now as a percent. So go ahead and hit pause and solve this. This one is 5 2/5. All right, now to write this as a percent, we have a couple different options. We can take our 5/8, and since that does not go into 100, because that's what we're going to make it equal to, we can simply take this and say, well, since it doesn't go into it equally, we will cross multiply. We're trying to find the value of x. So 5 times 100 is 500 equals 8 times x, which is 8x. And then we can divide both sides by 8. Excuse me. And then since we have 500 divided by 8, you would see that we will end up getting then, I believe, take my calculator here, x equals 62.5. So then that's your final answer when you do that. And since that is written over 100, then that is simply your percent. So we can take that 62 and 5/10 and put a percent sign on it, and then you would be done. Okay? So now, there is another way of solving this as well, and you could simply say, well, 5/8, I'm going to divide that 5 divided by 8, and you would see that you get 0.625. That's the decimal value. And then you could simply move the decimal over 2 places to the right to get your 62.5 and put a percent sign on it. That is another possible way of solving. Now let's look at our next one, where we have 5 2/5. Now, one way is by simply saying, all right, we're going to make this into an improper fraction. So 5 times 5 is 25, plus 2 more is 27 over 5. And we're going to make that equal to a number over 100. So now 5 times what gives me 100? Well, 5 times 20, since 5 and 100 are compatible. So we multiply this by 20, and 27 times 20 is then going to give me 540. And since it's over 100, it would be 540%. Another possible way of doing that is by simply saying, all right, since there's 5 wholes, I already know it's going to be 500 something, and then take your 2/5 and make that equal to a number over 100, which could have multiplied by 20 again, and you get 40, so 41/100ths, 40% there, and put a percent sign. Either way works perfectly fine. Again, you could also take your 2/5 and divide those. 2 divided by 5 and you get 0.4, and you'd have to move that decimal 2 places to the right, which would give me 40%. Bring the 5 down and you get 500. So you could have done that, and 3 different possible ways of solving, so feel free to use any of those choices. Go ahead and hit pause and solve these. Alright, so first thing again, you're writing each percent as a decimal, and since we have this as a percent, we can simply say that my decimal is right here, and to get rid of that, you're going to divide by 100, and you'd simply move it 2 places to the left, which gives me 0.03. Or you could simply say, well, here's my percent. I'm going to take 3 over 100, and since you read that as 3/100ths, that's exactly what you would write as the decimal form, 3/100ths. So either method works for that as well. 138%. Again, since it's 100, I already know that it's going to be 1 point something, because that's 1 whole. And then 38/100ths, 38 over 100. 38/100ths, again, is 38/100ths, written as the decimal. Another possible way, again, is moving the decimal 2 places to the left, and you see you get 1.38 as well for that. So again, either one of those methods works perfectly fine. Let's take a look at our next, and it says write each decimal as a percent. So go ahead and hit pause and solve this. So again, we can simply take this 9 over 100 and simply say, all right, since it's 9 over 100, as long as I can get it over 100, because this is 9/100ths, since it's over 100, then that's the percent, 9%. Okay. Another way is, since we're adding a percent sign, we're going to move it towards the percent sign where we would put it, 2 places again. And since we're multiplying it by 100 is what you're doing, and you can move it 2 places to the right, and you get 9 point and put your percent sign. Here's another situation where we have 2 and 85/100ths. The 2 wholes, that's definitely going to be my 200 and something. And because remember, 2 wholes, each whole is 100%, so that's going to represent 200. And again, we can move our decimal 2 places to the right, add your percent sign to, so 285%, or you could take your 85/100ths, since it's written over 100, that is your percent. And again, here's your 2 wholes, so it'd be 2 and 85/100ths. So 2 wholes, that's my 200, and 85 over 100. Okay, so the 85 percent. So 285% is your final answer. Most of you, I think, at this point understand the reasons why we move the decimal to the right to add a percent, and the reasons why we move it 2 places to the left, again, because we're dividing by 100 for converting from a percent to a decimal. Feel free to use those methods. Now we're going to be rolling a number cube. So probability of rolling an odd, and again, how many numbers are on a number cube? Hopefully you just said 6. And I like to write them down so that I can visually see those possibilities. Again, number cube is like a die. When we look at dice, we need to make certain that we see that there's a total of 6, a top, a bottom, a left side, right side, and a front and a back. Total of 6. So we're looking for the probability of rolling an odd number. And again, you're writing this as a fraction, and you need to make certain that it is in simplest form. So since the odd numbers are 1, 3, and 5, I have a total of 3 out of possible 6. Reduce that by 3, and you get 1/2, and that's your simple answer. Go ahead and solve for probability of finding a 3 or a 4. Go ahead and hit pause and solve. Since we have only 1 3 and 1 4, that's a total of 2, and again out of a possible 6. So we are going to divide those by 2 to get 1/3. And that would be your answer to this. Let's take a look at our next one. It says draw a tree diagram to show the sample space. So go ahead and hit pause and solve this. Now a tree diagram, again, you're going to look at the choices, and it says a choice of comedy, action, horror, or science fiction DVD. And then the second option is whether you're going to watch it in widescreen or full screen format. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different options. So that's going to be my choice 1, which is going to be, and I'm going to abbreviate, comedy, action, horror, and science fiction. And then from there, choice 2 is going to be whether it's widescreen or full screen. So widescreen or full. And it's off of each one, wide or full, wide or full, and then wide or full. Now we need to find our outcomes from each one of those branches. So it's going to be comedy wide, comedy full, action, wide, action full, horror wide, horror full, and then science fiction wide and science fiction full. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 possible outcomes, and that's more likely what they're going to be asking you. How many possible outcomes are there? There are 8. Now you could also be looking at the fundamental counting principle where you could say, well, there's 4 of those, and there are 2 of these options, and 2 times 4 gives me 8. But again, they're wanting you to draw the tree diagram. So you didn't have a choice. You had to at least draw this diagram to get it. Okay, and then they're probably going to ask you some other questions regarding this particular outcome. Okay. Now it says out of 32 students, 8 prefer pepperoni on their pizza. What is the probability that students like pepperoni on their pizza? Go ahead and hit pause and solve A. Well, it's saying that out of 32 students, 8 prefer pizza. Then it's simply 8 over a total of 32. And yes, you'd want to reduce this, and we'll reduce it by 8. And we get 1, and 32 divided by 8 is 4. So 1/4 of the students like pepperoni on their pizza. Now for letter B, I want you to go ahead and hit pause and solve this as we predict or what we would expect to happen in the future. So go ahead and solve this. Remember, proportions are what you're going to need to solve. All right, so you're going to take my ratio of pepperoni pizza per student or who likes pepperoni on their pizza. That's your rate. That's your ratio. That's what we're basing everything off of. So we're making that equal to how many total students are there? 240. We're trying to find out the rate equivalent ratio to 1/4 with 240 as our denominator. So again, to do this, we cross product. So 1 times 240 is 240, which equals 4 times x, which is 4x. And then we are going to divide both sides by the number with our variable. And then we'll see that we get x equals, well, 240 divided by 4 is 60. So 60 students is what we would expect according to our ratio that we have on the survey that we conducted. 1/4 of them like pepperoni on their pizza, so 1/4 basically of 240 is 60. So 60 students, and yes, you would want to write that on there as well, students. So let's look at our next one. It says estimate the percent. This is what we did the other day, our last one that we worked on. And it says use the conversion chart in your notes to solve. So go ahead and hit pause and solve these. 73% of 20, so we are going to round my 73% to the nearest one on our sheet, and 75 would be our best. You could also use 70, which would be the 7/10, but I'm going to round this to 75% because it's the better of the two. So I have 3/4 of, again, means multiply, and then times 20 over 1. Now, does 4 go into 20 equally? Yes, it does. Therefore, we're going to leave 20 the same. If it didn't, we could have rounded this number to make it compatible with this denominator. So we're going to cross reduce. The 4 divides into 4 once, and 4 divides into 20 5 times. So now complete. 3 times 5, which is 15, over the 1, which equals 15. So 15 is 75% of 20. So go ahead and let's look at this. 41% of 243. We're looking at our 41%, and we can see that that rounds to a 40% on our conversion chart. And that fraction is equivalent to 2/5. Of, again, means multiply. And then we're looking at 243. Now, does 5 go into 243? No, it doesn't. So we're going to then look at this and try to round it to a number that it does go into equally. And we have a couple options. One, because this is a larger number, we can just simply, if we're trying to be close, we can round it to 245. Or if we're trying to do maybe some more mental math, we could round it to 250, and I think we would be okay with that as well. We'll leave it as 245. And so when we look at this, we see that we can reduce these. And so 245 divided by our 5 is going to give us 49. And 5 divided by 5 is 1. Whoops. But we see 1 times 1 is 1. But we've got, again, multiply by our number over here. So 2 times 49 is going to give us 98 for an answer. So 98 is about 40% of 245. Okay? And again, we're estimating, we're rounding in this case. All right, so going back to this. So again, let's move on to our next problem. Sorry about that. I had to redo a few things here. And this one is going to be on tips and discounts. So as we go to this next screen, again, tips and discount. So when we do this, again, for a tip, we have to realize and understand that we are dealing with not just a discount, but it is a tip. So we're going to be adding for a tip, and for discounts, we're going to be subtracting. So make certain that we have that clear understanding. So first of all, we're going to deal with a tip, and we're going to say that we're going to charge for a DVD. We're going to have a price of $21 for a DVD, and we're going to give a tip for purchasing this for a percentage of 7%. Okay. Now, obviously, when we discuss tips, when we're talking about restaurants, usually it's 18 to 20%. So a lot of times your percentages will be bigger. It just depends on the situation. So if we do that, we're simply going to take $21 and we're going to multiply it by, well, we can't multiply by a percent. So again, remember, we have to make that a decimal, which is by simply moving the decimal 2 places to the left. And so you take your calculator and you can simply say 21 times 0.07, which gives me $1.47. But remember, this is added on to what we already have. So $21 plus my $1.47, lining decimals up, 47, 2, and 2. So you get $22.47. For our discount, let's say we have a cell phone that is $149 and we have a 30% discount. So we are going to take my 149 times 0.30. So when we take 149 times 0.30, whoops, you get $44.70. But we then again have to take my 149 minus 44.70 and subtract the two of them, and you get $104.30. So the big thing here is to make certain that you realize discounts, you subtract the difference, and on tips, you need to add that answer to the original amount. So now let's look at our next one, which is interest. And so remember, our interest again is P times R times T, principal rate and time. And we're going to have $1,200, 3.9% interest, and 8 months. You would multiply those together, converting this from 1,200 times 0.039 times the 8 months, which 8 months, whoops, this was months, we cannot multiply by 8. We have to make that into a fraction. It's out of 12. Okay, so my fraction then needs to be divided by 4, which is going to give me 2/3. And if we write that as a decimal, 2/3, since we have that, we can take that 2 divided by 3 and get 0.66, and that is a repeating decimal. So I would take my 1,200 times 0.039 times 0.66 repeating. So take that number first of the 66 repeating times 0.039 times 1,200, and you would get $31.19988, which we're rounding to the nearest penny, so $31.20. Okay. Reason we have to multiply this number first is because it was a repeating decimal with that fraction, and so 2 divided by 3, set it up and solve it going in that direction. Then it leaves that repeating decimal on it. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.